All right, now we're going to talk about the presidency. So here you see a picture of President George Bush when he went to ground zero after 9/11. And then on the right, you have President Biden being sworn in with Jill holding the Bible. And there's the illustrious Hunter. So the presidency is the most visible position in the US government. During the Constitutional Convention of 1787, delegates accepted the need to empower a relatively strong and vigorous chief executive. But they also wanted this chief to be restrained by checks from other branches of the federal government, as well as by the Constitution itself. Over time, the power of the presidency has grown in response to circumstances and challenges. So remember, we did not want a king, we did not want a tyrant, but we still wanted an executive. So the president is a single executive elected by the Electoral College for 4 years and who is eligible for reelection to one term. To win the presidency, a candidate must get 270 electoral votes. That's why when we talked about elections, it was that road to 270. And as we learn about the electoral college is not the popular vote. It is a separate set of electors that you're voting for. So the chief executive must be at least 35 years old and a natural born US citizen. And they must have been an inhabitant of the United States for at least 14 years. So this is interesting here. They say natural born, and they're leaving it open simply because, we have people in the State Department, people in the military, right? People who, could have children that would be American citizens, that would be natural born US citizens outside of the continental United States. Where that came up was when John McCain was running for president. John McCain was born in the Panama Canal in a military base where his dad was serving. So he was still eligible. So then we have the process of impeachment. Impeachment is the act of charging a government official with serious wrongdoing. This is supposed to prevent presidential tyranny, but we'll talk about that. So presidents have expanded powers in the areas of the presidential war power. So it is important to note that only Congress can declare war, but the presidential war power allows him to commit troops to foreign countries for certain activities. Executive privilege and executive orders. So here, this shows the Electoral College. So you see, like California, based on the amount of population we have 54 electors. And then a state like Rhode Island has 4. DC has 3. So it's all done on population. So presidential power is limited. So under the Constitution, through a series of checks and balances, Congress, they appropriate items, they have lawmaking oversight and impeachment, and the judiciary, they act through judicial review and the authority to declare certain presidential acts unconstitutional. So it's not just a unified, the president is not a monarch. So how do we select a president? We are in the middle of a presidential election cycle now, right? So candidates announce their intention to run. Primary and caucus debates take place. That's kind of where we're at right now. States and parties hold their primaries and caucuses. That'll be us in March. The candidates hold nominating conventions to choose their candidates. That'll be next summer. And then we have the actual presidential debates between the opposing sides. Then election day is held. The electors cast their vote. Congress counts the vote. And then we have inauguration day. So the idea of the Electoral College, that is why we vote for the president in November, but yet he doesn't take office until January, right? So pros and cons, this Electoral College, is it good or is it bad? So the Electoral College protects the interests of minorities. It gives more power to the states and allows for this two-party system. The cons are the complexity of the system can dissuade people from voting. The candidate favored by the majority may not win, and swing states and small states are given more power. So, it's kind of a balancing act. I would argue that, is the two-party system good for us? I would love to hear your thoughts. You're an online class, so email me if you really want to give me your thoughts. So this map is an infographic on how to become president. So the process, it's a longer one, but it's the same, right? You go through the constitutional requirements, the primaries and caucuses, conventions, elections, all that jazz. So once the president's been inaugurated, he or she can nominate people to fill the 15 available cabinet positions. So the cabinet is kind of be the people who run some of the top agencies, the top federal agencies. So the Senate has the ability to confirm or reject the nomination. So the president, he can always make appointments, but those have to be confirmed. Also subject to Senate approval are a number of non-cabinet administrators in various departments, such as administrative heads of agencies and commissions. Not all non-cabinet positions are open at the beginning of an administration, but presidents move quickly to put their preferred choices in most roles. So when I worked for the SBA, we had to switch administrators midway through because that's when President Biden, was elected. So the other lady lost their job. So the first 100 days of a presidency, is important. Following inauguration, a newly elected president must decide how to deliver on what was promised during the campaign. Remember, during these campaigns, they make all these claims. One of the claims that President Biden made was he was going to get rid of all of our student loans. It's not really working out that way. Riding the wave of goodwill, they're compared to a measure of presidential effectiveness, which was popularized during President Roosevelt's term in office, first term. This is the honeymoon period. It is the time when the president is the most powerful and has the most benefit of the doubt in the public, by the public and the media. It's their first 100 days in office. They haven't had a time to screw things up yet. So how does technology empower presidents? So in the early days of the Republic, presidents were limited in the ways they could reach the public to convey their information. Newspapers were clumsy to attract, proved clumsy as devices to attract support. Radio allowed the broadcasting of the president's voice into many of the nation's homes. Movie newsreels were used as one of the first innovations to push presidential agenda. You could actually see them. Television really helped, get that reach. And then the internet and social media allows for almost near instant contact with the public, such as, Donald Trump and all of his tweets. The presidential appeal to the public for approval. The concept of going public involves the president delivering a major televised address in the hopes that Americans watching will be compelled to contact their House and Senate members, and that such public pressure will result in congressional support of the president. Presidential visits can build support for policy initiatives or serve political purposes, such as helping the president reward supporters. So an important aspect of the presidency is also the first ladies. Before 1933, most first ladies served as private advisors to their husbands. But Eleanor Roosevelt, she became one of the first to take an active public role championing civil rights. She actually helped create the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights after the president had passed, because she was considered such a mover and shaker for civil rights and human rights. And then Jacqueline Kennedy and Lady Bird Johnson were known for taking on beautification projects. And then Rosalind Carter, she established the office of the First Lady. So here's Rosalind Carter and Betty Ford when they were looking at the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. In the 70s, the role returned to that of a public advocate for political issues. Every First Lady has their issue they deal with. So Hillary Clinton, she actually broke ground when her husband put her in charge of healthcare reform. So, certain first ladies, it's been literacy. I think Michelle Obama's was healthy eating. Melania Trump was adopted kids. Jill Biden, I'm not 100% sure. So they deal with things. So then the president, he has stuff he can do without Congress. So he can demand the resignation of removal of cabinet officers. He can issue recess appointments, which occurs when the Senate's not in action, is in recess. He can pardon people. He can issue executive orders, proclamations, or executive memoranda. So these are not laws. Executive orders are just instructions for executive branches that are requiring policy change. He can issue line item vetoes and sign statements. So this unilateral authority. So the executive order, presidents are more likely to justify the use of executive orders in cases of national security or as part of their war powers. So a lot of the immigration issues that have happened lately have happened via executive order because immigration falls under Homeland Security, which is an executive branch. So then there's executive agreements. Presidents can also issue executive agreements with foreign powers. These are formal agreements negotiated between the countries, but they're not ratified as a treaty. So if the president doesn't think a treaty can be ratified, they can enter into these agreements because for a treaty to be ratified, Congress has to approve it. So how does the president use persuasion to gain support? So there's a political science, Richard Neustadt theorized that presidential power is the power to persuade, a process that takes many forms, including cutting deals and making compromises that will attract support from at least some members of the opposition party without excessively alienating members of their own. Have staff handle media coverage of the administration, affording some opportunities for indirect persuasion. Going public in an attempt to put pressure on other groups to cooperate. There are all different ways the president can to get support. Other issues with the presidency, just to keep in mind, is what happens with presidential succession. Under the 25th Amendment, if the president is incompetent, we can, he can be removed. So I encourage you to research that. And if you have any questions, please let me know.